Marco, thank you for
Hi, sister.
Hey.
Hi everybody, this is Friday night. We're gonna start again with High Thurman's book, Revolutionary Hillbilly. Sister Veronica is gonna start us off with our Statement of Unity, and then we're gonna start on page 128 in the actual, well, at least in the copy that I have. Shoot to Kill is the name of the chapter that we're gonna start off with today. Go ahead,
Yes.
sister.
Okay, I'll start off. Are we doing the preface as well?
Yeah, whatever we normally do.
Okay. Preface starts off with the U.S. was founded as a colonial settler state based upon white supremacy and slavery, stealing the lands of the indigenous nations, breaking every treaty made with them, and confining them to reservations or concentration camps. As the country became more powerful, the eagle sunk its claws into other nations, making war on Mexico and grabbing its northern territory, invading Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and Philippines, and either annexing them outright or making them colonies or neo-colonies. And in the 20th century, it became the major imperialist power in the world, exploiting both the people within its boundaries and those in every other country, bullying them with military interventions, and robbing them of their right to self-determination. As Huey P. Newton stated, we have two enemies to fight, racism and capitalism. Between the two, capitalism is primary, racism is a byproduct of capitalism. The working people of the world of every ethnicity or nationality face a common enemy that is destroying life on Earth. Our enemy is a small ruling class of property owners controlling most of the world's wealth and resources. We must have our basic needs met to live a good and meaningful life: food, shelter, healthcare, education, freedom from oppression by the state, and peace with other nations. To obtain these essential things for life, we must have the power to see to it that the abundance that is available is shared equitably. And then the Statement of Unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition reads as follows. The legacy of the First Rainbow Coalition dates back to its founding on April 4th, 1969 by the original Black Panther Party, original Young Lords, and the Young Patriots organization. A number of other organizations joined this coalition not too long afterwards, such as the American Indian Movement, the Brown Berets, Rising Up Angry, the Red Guards, and others. Since the founding of the United States, the masses had developed a number of popular movements that came together to fight back against this capitalist, imperialist system in various ways around particular demands. Nevertheless, none had established a movement quite like the First Rainbow Coalition. This historic movement was the first of its kind that established a model of class struggle like no other. Its charismatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton of the Illinois chapter of the original Black Panther Party, stated that at the end of the day, we weren't engaged in a race struggle. He said that it's a class struggle, goddammit. By uniting with the various oppressed ethnicities and masses, they were able to bridge the gap between the various ethnic communities that white supremacy had long sought to keep divided. This class solidarity equipped them with the material basis and class consciousness to see their common class condition. Therefore, the necessity to form a united front against their common class oppressor, the capitalist imperialist ruling class. The ruling class viewed this as the greatest threat to their class rule and subsequently used the entire repressive forces of the state, such as police, courts, jails, prisons, and intelligence agencies, amongst others, in order to crush this emerging revolutionary socialist movement. We refounded the Rainbow Coalition on May 14, 2021, with the intent of upholding the legacy of the original Rainbow Coalition. We believe that this historic example is the model for the united front that will best serve our class liberation. By upholding the 10-point program of the original Black Panther Party, which was subsequently adopted and later expanded by the original Young Lords, Young Patriots organization, and all other original Rainbow Coalition members, we establish our programmatic unity. The 6 disciplinary rules that we uphold ties all organizations in our coalition to a common professional discipline. History has bestowed upon our generation a common class mission to fulfill. The representatives of the capitalist imperialist ruling class, represented by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, cannot liberate us. It is their class intention and interest to uphold our common class oppression. Therefore, it is only we, the oppressed masses of all ethnicities and nationalities, who must build the necessary class solidarity, class consciousness, organizational structures, and a united front that will ultimately liberate ourselves. This is what the Second Rainbow Coalition is committed to. This is the historic mission we intend to fulfill. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All power to the people, boots on the ground. And then we have a list of members of the coalition: the New African Black Panther Party, the White Panther Party, Green Party of New Jersey, the Poor People's Army, La Mesa Nacional de los Brown Berets, FURY, which stands for Feminist Uprising to Resist Inequality and Exploitation, NASO, which stands for North Alabama School for Organizers, the New Era Young Lords, and Guardian Rebellion. And our 6 disciplinary rules are: 1, members will conduct themselves in a manner to bring credit to the coalition and will treat others with respect and politeness. 2, members will be sober when on Rainbow Coalition business and will not engage in any criminal activity while a member. 3, no member will engage in violence except in the extremity of self-defense. 4, members will not gossip nor be divisive to the unity of the Second Rainbow Coalition. 5, members will not act as informers nor work against the purpose of the Second Rainbow Coalition. 6, nobody is authorized to speak for the Second Rainbow Coalition unless authorized to do so.
Also, the American Indian movement need to be included as far as all members of the coalition, Indiana, Kentucky.
That one is actually not, but we did just vote in the, I believe it's the New England chapter, but the Kentucky and Indiana one got taken off. But
Okay,
this past meeting, we did end up, so we are gonna have to revise that.
okay, so it's the American Indian Movement New England chapter?
I do believe so. I don't know if that is the correct verbiage, but yes.
Okay,
I guess it would be a good time to at least mention that Hai, the author of this book, and Kwame are starting their book tour tonight, pretty much at this exact same time that we're talking right now in Baltimore.
yes.
So they're going to be Baltimore, and then I think I might miss one because I think I've lost track of the people that are a little bit more west of me. But they're gonna go to Baltimore. They're in Baltimore right now, and then I know they're going to Philly. Oh, and then they're going to New Jersey, Providence, New York, and then 2 spots in Connecticut. So if anybody that does listen to this is around that area, definitely come check them out. I'm excited to see them and actually like hang out with them for a little bit.
Yes,
Oh, that's
and
good.
and funds are still being accepted if anyone would like to support this
Absolutely.
wonderful cause. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So I'll read, I guess, Shoot to Kill, and then Johnny, do you want to do the next one? And then Sister Anna can do the next one?
That'd be great.
Yeah, of course.
All right. I lost track. I'm just going through here to see if there's one more.
So
If
are
there's
we reading 128 to what page?
to 163. So depending on how it is, maybe we'll split one up so that Sister Veronica can do it again, but we'll see.
Sure.
I think there might be 3 of them. I'm not sure. All right.
I want
Well,
to say it's a really long second one.
What's that?
Are we gonna have the PDF file on the screen?
Oh yeah. Do
Not-
we?
No, not with Brother High book. I don't think so, but this is a long, I
Yeah.
believe the Rainbow Coalition is pretty long. So
Mhm.
we could take some turns. Do we all have the books? Johnny, do you have the book?
No, I don't. I definitely need to order it.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Okay,
All right. We
we
just
can
read
share
it
it.
and you can engage into the Q&A session.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, we'll split it up, and then if anything, I can see if I can. The last time I ended up, I ended up thinking that I broke the whole Zoom, so I can try to potentially, if Shamako can make me host at a certain point after I'm done reading, I can try to see if I can work with it, and then let you know, Johnny, and if I can get it up on the screen for a little bit anyway for you.
Okay.
But all right, so I'll start with this one. Shoot to kill.
Your host now.
Oh, thanks, Shamako. All right. So the assassination of Martin Luther King brought great anxiety to patriots. Not only was he murdered by a white man, but it took place in the South. Many Southerners were afraid that there might be retaliation from people of color, and they did not know what to expect. When necessary, young patriots would go into the streets and bars, talk to the residents, and let them know if any trouble did arise, we were ready to de-escalate. Many young patriots joined the young lords at the Church of the Three Crosses in case the heat did come back to the neighborhoods. No problems occurred, mainly because most of the uptown cops were temporarily assigned to other communities of unrest. What did concern us came several days later when riots broke out in several Black communities and Mayor Daley issued his famous quote unquote shoot to kill order. Residents of Uptown felt that they also would be targeted by the cops. At a city hall press conference, Daley ordered his police to quote unquote shoot to kill any arsonists, to shoot, to maim, or cripple anyone looting any store in Chicago. We knew the order made it legal for the cops to continue doing what they had always been doing in Uptown and other poor communities in Chicago. And we knew that there would be unnecessary deaths. We were right in those assumptions. On Monday, April 15th, the Sun-Times newspaper in Chicago headline read, quote, story behind riot toll, the 9 who died, end quote. The newspaper identified the 9 who died as statistics in the midst of a general turmoil. To avoid offending Daley, the newspaper did not truthfully report what 2 reporters had written about the 9 killed in the riots. After much protest by Joel Haveman and Ben Hyman, the original writers of the article, the Sun-Times retracted the story and stated that the biggest mystery involved the deaths of 4 men shot in one small area of West Madison Street in a 3.5-hour span. The article explains, quote, one victim was shot in the back when he and his wife entered an alley to avoid police. The man was protecting his wife by covering her with his body when he was shot. 2 other men were shot inside stores. A 4th was a 24-year-old man shot in an alley. His sister said that he was just a bystander, end quote. On April 17th, after international and local criticism, Daley held a press conference denying his order to kill, saying there wasn't any shoot to kill order. They say that I gave orders to shoot down children. I said to the superintendent, if a man that has a Molotov cocktail in his hand and he throws it into a building with children and women above, he should be shot right there. And if I were there, I would shoot him. Everybody knows it was twisted around, and they said Daley gave orders to shoot children. That wasn't true, end quote. What was even more bizarre was when a reporter asked Daley's press secretary about the mayor's denial of his quote unquote shoot to kill order. The secretary simply blamed it on reporters, saying they quote should have printed what he meant, not what he said. Wow.
Wow.
That sounds familiar. Oh Lord. All right. Havman later said, quote, there's little doubt that there was a rogue police unit targeting people on that day, unquote. We knew about rogue police units. We were safe during the unrest because we were busy targeting our Black brothers and sisters. He wasn't sure, however, if the rogue unit committed the murders. If Daley couldn't control Chicago after Dr. King's assassination, he was determined to do so during the Democratic National Convention a few months later in August 1968. He was going to prove to the world that no one comes to his city and causes disorder. After threats that thousands of demonstrators were going to take over Lincoln Park on the city's lakefront and spike the water supply with LSD, Daley was able to assemble one of the largest security forces in the history of Chicago. In addition to
LSD.
right, that would be interesting. In addition to his gangs of 12,000 Chicago policemen, he asked the governor of Illinois to mobilize 5,000 National Guardsmen, 6,000 specially trained Army troops, several hundred state and county lawmen, and a large number of Secret Service and private private security service workers. The security totaled well over 25,000, while the anti-Vietnam War protesters who arrived for the convention numbered only a few thousand. The city of Chicago had become an armed camp. When the convention began, it was Daley's and the Chicago police gang's time to take revenge. He had not forgotten how the press exposed his quote-unquote shoot-to-kill order. The Chicago police also had taken an ass-kicking from the press and were still pissed that 8 of their own were jailed after the Summerdale police scandal. They were ready to bust some heads to show everyone that Daley was the boss. The police were Chicago's largest gang, and Daley was their leader. The mayor was convinced that by unleashing overwhelming force, the protests would remain under control. The situation escalated when sharp disagreements about the Vietnam War broke out between the delegates on the convention floor. A faction held by Eugene McCarthy demanded an end to the war. This position was challenged by presidential candidate Hubert Humphrey, who supported the war. Fights broke out and several delegates were beaten by the police. Outside the convention, police and National Guard began to indiscriminately gas, beat, and arrest protesters, reporters, clergy, and anyone that got in their way. On the convention floor, a delegate pleaded with Daley to stop the senseless brutality happening outside. From footage that contains no sound, Daley seems to be saying to the delegates, quote, "Fuck you, motherfucker." That's pretty serious. The battle was caught on television and broadcast all over the world, showing that Chicago, a city in a country built on democracy, was actually a police state run by a dictator who would go to any extreme to control his empire. Just a few months before the Democratic National Convention, the Anti-Riot Act, also known as the H. Brown Law, after the former Minister of Justice with the Black Panther Party, was passed as a response to the urban riots of 1964 to 1967.
Wow.
The law
Wow.
was right. The law was intended to deter outside instigators who did not live in local communities. It targeted anyone who, quote unquote, who uses interstate or foreign commerce or uses any facility of interstate commerce, including but not limited to the mail, telegraph, telephone, radio, on television, with the intent to A, incite a riot, B, to organize, promote, encourage, participate in, or carry on a riot, or C, to commit any act of violence in furtherance of a riot act, or D, to aid or abet any person in inciting or participating in or carrying on a riot or community any act of violence in furtherance of a riot. Well, that was pretty in-depth. 8 activists who became known as the Chicago 8 were arrested and charged with inciting riots during the Democratic Convention. They were Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin, founders and leaders of the Yippies. Tom Hayden, founder of Students for a Democratic Society. Dave Dillinger, pacifist and conscientious objector. Bobby Seale, Black Panther Party founder. In addition to John Freund's Lee Weiner, and Rennie Davis, moratorium to end the war in Vietnam and joint organizer. All but, I don't know how to say that, Fronies and Weiner were found guilty of violating the Anti-Riot Act. Because of his outbursts in court and being Black, Bobby Seale was sentenced to 4 years in prison. The convictions were later overturned on appeal. Due to the widespread media coverage of the violence at the Chicago Democratic Convention, the Walker Commission was appointed by the federal government to investigate the interaction of the protesters with the Chicago police. The commission published its findings in the Walker Report, concluded what happened amounted to a quote-unquote police riot directed at protesters. The Chicago Police Department was the only police force in the United States that was accused of a police riot by the President's Commission on Violence, directed by Daniel Walker, a businessman and a staff of over 30. The report states, the nature of the response was unrestrained and indiscriminate police violence on many occasions, particularly at night. The violence was made all the more shocking by the fact that it was often inflicted upon persons who had broken no law, disobeyed no order, made no threat. These included peaceful demonstrators, onlookers, and a large number of residents who were simply passing through or happened to live in the areas where confrontations were occurring. Most of us stayed away from the protests. Our protests were local and stayed in Uptown, just as Blacks and Hispanics remained in their neighborhood. Protesters had our sympathy and support, but our involvement would have only brought more attention to Uptown, especially if any one of us was arrested. Members of the Young Patriots knew that they would surely be charged with bogus crimes and imprisoned due to our activities in Uptown. The Young Lords in Lincoln Park believed the same would happen to them if they attended the protests. Instead, they offered medical care to injured protesters while we offered refuge. We knew the Chicago police and strongly believed that Daley would never relinquish power to anyone. The cops beat anyone and everyone who stood in their way. It made no difference if they were reporters, clergy, women, teenagers, or innocent bystanders. Daley and his gang were going to do to them what they had been doing to the poor of Chicago for decades. During the Democratic Convention, he was challenged by delegates and elected officials to stop the beatings, but the request fell on deaf ears as many were injured and jailed. Because members of the press were beaten indiscriminately, they finally believed that what the poor had been saying about being victims of the city government and the Chicago police was true. Daley, for his part, never admitted any wrongdoing. This guy.
He was a prick. I'm gonna
Good.
tell you, Daley was a straight up prick.
That's
he
one
was
way to
he,
put it, Sister Anna.
he was like 4 times worse than Trump.
Good.
Oh my God.
Honestly.
Wow. Yeah, that drove the
Oh my
point.
goodness.
The first part didn't drive the point, but that second part did, sis.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, and wild,
Oh.
like all of these things, like you could watch movies on this stuff, and like you can literally, the Bobby Seale, like they literally gagged that man.
Oh yeah.
That's sick. Like,
Yeah.
and that's our criminal justice. That's, come on now. But
yeah, but we know as far as the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King was all set up, and it was so weird is that the people that was close in his circle, one of them happened to serve as security for Dr. Martin Luther King as well as for Minister Malcolm X.
Interesting.
Very interesting. So it was all set up and infiltrated by the feds, and it was, a person on the inside and someone Black who did it. But of course, they would say that it's somebody on the opposite. So, but as far as Daley is concerned, that mayor, he was something else. He was really, really something else. And I cannot believe that they allowed him to stay in office that long back then. But I guess most of the people were more afraid of him, of the retaliation that would have taken place by trying to get him out. So, wow, I have to give it to the people out there in Chicago for dealing with his mess. Wow. Do you want me to take over on the Rainbow Coalition or Veronica?
I was actually trying to look up really quick Probably bad timing. I should look it up after. But
Okay.
there's a police chief that was in Chicago, and I believe that he died in like, I don't know, very, very recently, maybe like 2017 or something along those lines. So I'm gonna look up
Okay.
when he started being the police chief, just so that we can imagine how terrible this awful human being and Mayor Daley must have been as a combination, if that was possible at any given time.
Yeah, he was a mess. He was a mess, and it was some more that he was doing. Matter of fact, I think he got connection in trying to murder all the members from the Mood People, and that was another organization. And what they have been through, I just had to say, is a miracle that some of the members are still living, and it just show you that. A lot of people are still unjustly in jail or in prison unnecessarily, and is little to nothing that's being done to to get their release for chumped up charges. And it's a crime. I think it's a crime that these individuals are still incarcerated, where the president did not pardon them, give them clemency for these stupid charges that didn't make sense, that resulted in them being in prison for 30 to 40 years. And the whole system the judicial system needs to be revised. There needs to be some people held accountable, for the wrongs that has been done to innocent citizens who have been targeted, marginalized, and sentenced for no reason, out of fear, out of the threat of a civil race war that was about to take place than anything back in the 60s and 70s and even 80s. So if you're ready, I'll just go ahead and start reading, unless anybody want to add on.
Yeah, go ahead and start, and then I'll try to share the screen and figure out what I'm searching for, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, I'll read up to 150, and then page 150, and Sister Veronica, you can take over the remaining page. Okay, chapter, I'm sorry. The Rainbow Coalition. Rainbow Coalition are groups such as a political condition whose members are of different ethnic, political, or religion background. Merriam-Webster Dictionary. The Young Patriot activities were being monitored by the Black Panther Party, led by Deputy Chairman Fred Hampton, in charge of Jimenez of the Young Lords organization. Jimenez, a former gang member, had come to embrace revolutionary politics while in prison. Hampton came to believe that the revolution could not be won without the poor and working class of all colors. Jimenez was already identifying with Southern whites that were members of the North Side gang located on Sheffield Avenue. These called themselves the Rebels, and one of their leaders was Puerto Rican. The Black Panther knew the Young Patriots by working with us in the Cleveland Terry presidential campaign. We were approached by Bobby Lee, field secretary for the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther, and someone the YPO had met at a Lincoln Park citizens meeting to become a part the Rainbow Coalition with the Young Lords organization. The Black Panther Parties for Self-Defense, founded in 1966 in Oakland, California by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, was a Black political organization that provided a revolutionary model of serving the people with a 10-point program that guided their activities. Initially, They started as an organization to combat police brutality, through police monitoring patrols, which later grew into a broader effort to serve their community with survival program pending revolution, free medical services, breakfast for children, and legal services, among others. The Panthers grew rapidly, establishing 38 chapters across the United States at the same time. The Panthers were more militant than the Patriots, but we could identify with their service to the people. Their model was enormously influential on us. Bob Lee gave us a lot of great guidance on how to adapt their survival programs to our community. The Young Lords organization started in 1959 as a Puerto Rican street gang doing what most street gangs do, fighting those who they believed to be their enemies, including whites, blacks, and those of Hispanic origins, or whoever invaded their turf. In 1968, the gang changed from street fighting to a political organization. While in the Cook County Jail, the gang's leader, Jimenez, was influenced by radical prisoners. When he was released, he convinced the gang that gang banging was actually hurting the Lincoln Park neighborhood, as well as dividing them from the people and organization that were fighting for a better neighborhood. Jimenez believed in revolution and uprising of protests by people, both from Wicker Park and later when Puerto Ricans' population were again being pushed out of Lincoln Park by urban renewal. While protesting imperialism in Puerto Rico was the solution to their freedom from oppression of the capitalistic system that had held them down for too long. Their program was called, in parentheses, Educate to Liberate, in a quote. The law's activity caught the attentions of Fred Hampton, who was chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, and he invited them to form a partnership with the Black Panthers, which would become known as the original Rainbow Coalition, in a quote. I also want to add that Chairman Fred Hampton, here's a fun fact, he introduced Shaka Khan to his chapter, and I don't know if anybody know this, but Shaka Khan is Panther. So continuing, the laws got more involved in addressing the needs of their community. They led demonstrations against police brutality for women's rights, welfare rights, economics, and social equality, as well as self-determinations for their community in Puerto Rico. They adopted some of the Black Panther programs, such as the Emerterio Bastenses health clinics, free daycare centers, free dental clinics, and a Puerto Rican cultural center, and a free breakfast for children program. As with Uptown and other poor communities, urban renewal was also targeting Lincoln Park, which was prime real estate and deserved by many developers. Mayor Daley established the Urban Renewal Conservation Council, consisting of all white middle-class members. Again, like Uptown, this was a rubber stamp committee to carry out Daley's wishes. Jimenez had learned a valuable lesson from the past. In 1958, the city of Chicago began the Urban Renewal Program by expanding the downtown borders into Wicker Park, moving the poor and mostly Puerto Rican community into the Lincoln Park, then a rundown neighborhood, and promising replacement housing for those who were displaced. The promise was not kept. Instead, the city replaced the community with the Old Town and the Carl Sandburg Village, which were predominantly white and middle class. The young laws were not about to be pushed around by Mayor Daley. Jimenez and 250 protesters occupied an empty lot on Hosted Street and Armitage Avenue, which was designated for tennis courts. Instead, the people demanded the city build a park for children to have a place to play and family to enjoy. Like us, the young law posed the biggest threat to the cops because of their visibility in the community. They were major targets for Daley's police gang. Jimenez was arrested 18 times. The joke was that if we wanted to reach him, we can call Cook County Jail first because they always knew where to find him, or that we should start a gas fund for his lawyer, his name, Jeffrey Haas. Police beatings, harassment, forced arrests, and murder were a part of the plan. Even off-duty cops were in on the game. Manuel Ramos, a youth member of the Young Lords, was shot dead by an off-duty cop. The shooting led to a massive march of 2,000 people on Daley's Bridgeport neighborhood. The Young Patriots, the Black Panthers, and SDS were in attendance. All murderers are tragic, but the killing of Reverend Bruce Johnson and his wife, Eugenia, was particularly brutal. Reverend Johnson was a pastor of Armitage Methodist Church and a strong supporter of the Young Lords. He wanted to provide them with a space to run a breakfast program at a daycare center. On Sunday, September 28, 1969, he and his wife were murdered. The Reverend was warned to distance himself from the Young Lords. Today, no one has been held accountable to these murders. It still remains a cold case in the Chicago police files. Early 1968 was the beginning of planning the Rainbow Coalition in a meeting that included Jimenez, Lee, and representatives of the Students for a Democratic Society. The Young Patriots officially entered into the National Radical Movement in April 1968. An official program announcement of the formation of the coalition was during a press conference in December 1968. This was a necessary move if we were going to be serious about making changes in Uptown. We wanted to show the nation that poor Southern whites could stand behind their Black and Brown brothers and sisters in revolutionary solidarities to fight for freedom. It was time for us to walk the talk. Why would the Black Panthers and Young Lords welcome whites who had traditionally been their oppressors into the coalitions as equals? Many in the community has been active for several years, organizing programs and action groups to build a better quality of life for Uptown residents. Fred Hampton knew of the Somerville Police March and the Cleveland Terry presidential campaign, and recognized that many of us were willing to fight for justice. We were welcomed into the coalition due to our anti-racist politics and because we were a group that had proven that many members had evolved from street gangs members and poor oppressed Southern whites into community organizers named the same as many members of the Black Panthers and Young Lords had involved. We adopted many of the Panther programs. They also recognized that we were targets for the cops and Mayor Daley, much the same as they were in their community. The three organizations were an odd fit for a coalition, yet all three were fighting to break down radical and class barriers. Alongside the Rainbow Coalition and inspired by it, Raising Up Angry became organizing in the Logan Square neighborhood in Chicago. They later joined the coalition after adopting many of its survival programs, such as a free health clinic, breakfast program, free legal services, and a GI program for returning Vietnam War veterans. Of major importance was Angry, powerful newspaper of the same name, which reached thousands of readers, informing them about their activities. Their philosophy was that of the Rainbow's coalitions, to unite poor community to fight racism and the oppressiveness of the capitalist system. Rising Up Angry was comprised of many SD students who left joint after the community students split and used the joint model to organize working class whites in Logan Square, another poor Chicago community. It was a perfect fit for Mike James, Diane Fager, Bob Lawson, Pat Sturgeon, Nora Davis, Stephen Tappan, James Kadia, and other students who have successfully organized with Southern Street people. Some were called greasers. The greaser subculture were identified as individual gang members made up predominantly of working and lower working class whites, originally from the southern and eastern United States in the 1940s and 1950s. Photography from the early days of Angry showed that members of the Young Patriots attended their activities and social events. We saw the benefits of being a part of the Rainbow Coalition as being extraordinary for us because it was the beginning of a more powerful local union that the Daily Machine could not ignore. There was power in numbers, and that we could have support for our causes, especially after having gained support from all racial groups in Uptown. Further, it was a good move for the Patriots because they were not seeking national attention, but it could not hurt our cause. While filming in Chicago during the Democratic National Convention in 1968, filmmaker Mike Gray and Howard Alt of the film group heard about the revolution between the Panthers and, quote, hillbillies, in a quote, who came together to organize the poor in their community under the umbrella of the Rainbow Coalition. They knew that this coalition was a historical event. Never before has Southern whites and blacks gotten together in Chicago to organize for identical revolutionary purposes. A portion of the film follows Bob Lee, a Black Panther organizer, and a young patriarch meeting with uptown residents to announce the coalition between the Black Panthers and the young patriarch. Racial tension did exist, and we were prepared to defend the Panther presence in the community. The success of the meeting was one of unity. Most residents attending had looked upon the Panthers with suspicions, but that changed after hearing that the same conditions of poverty, police brutality, slum living, class hatred existed in the Black and Hispanic communities. The meetings have broken down crucial racial barriers in Uptown. The film American Revolutionary 2 was released in April of 1969. It was banned from every major movie theater in Chicago by the Daily Machine. Finally, Playboy Theater owner Hugh Hefner will go against the wishes of Daly and allow the film to be previewed. The 3 Penny Cinema ran the film for 30 days. We were met with suspicion by some of the members of the Black Panthers and Young Lords due to the history of slavery and racism of the white Southern people. Both groups lost some members, but most welcome as their equal, because they saw the time had come for all peoples to put aside their differences and unite under the umbrella of the Rainbow Coalition. The leadership of both the Black Panther and the Young Lord believed that the purge was necessary and beneficial to them because both organizations have moved from using differences and conflict with other racial, ethnic, and minority groups to one of class struggles. The young patriarchs were identified by them as worthy of joining their coalition because we have proven that even with our history of slavery and racism, we were fighting the same cause. There was a strong understanding that self-determination must remain the main focus in forming the coalition. The coalition can stand for unity, but each members group would operate independently within their own communities. Under this umbrella, the coalition would act as one group and support each other's causes. The understanding was if any basic change were to come about in America for the poor and oppressed, and for changes to have longevity, they would have to come from the grassroots because the poor knew how to solve their problems if they were given the programs and resources. If the poor and oppressed could solve their problem, then it would be a giant step in alleviating poverty and oppression in America. In addition to putting an end to the many government-sponsored agencies that imposed unreachable goals and guidelines on the poor while using them as statistics for future fundings. We took inspiration from the Panthers in other ways. They wrote a 10-point program outlining their demands and vision for a better society. We modeled ours after this and wrote an 11-point program, which was intended to address eliminating class structures and allow workers to control wealth that comes from what they produce. Like the Panther programs, ours address immediate survival needs within the contents of basic human rights. We assert that food, clothing, shelter, and medical care should be seen as basic human rights. We embrace the idea first put forward by the Panther that the people must control the police and that the police must live in the community they patrolled. Today, it is common for activists to talk about a school to prison pipeline. In our platform, we pointed out that schools in poor communities are run like prisons and demanded that poor children be given the same education materials as wealthy students. We identify racism as a tool of the capitalist and call for an end to the draft in the American War in Vietnam. Perhaps the most important part of our program was, quote, to create revolutionary solidarity with all oppressed people and country to create national liberation. We had several approaches to education by using printed materials, leaflets, books, and films through discussion groups and by example, as Doug Youngblood put it, quote, the young patriarch understood from examining social movements in this country that militancy and programs designed and mitigate program people's suffering without affecting the balance of power were inadequate and ineffective, and that if they were to avoid the mistakes of others, then their approach must show clearly from the start where they stood. With this in mind, they formulated, published it, and distributed copies of the 11-point program. Militancy was our only solution to our problems. Pacificism and compromising with the power structure have been a failure for the poor. Militancy had to be a tool to reach revolution, even if it meant violence. It was commonly believed that the real reason that members of the Young Patriarch and the Rainbow Coalition were under continual observation by the Chicago police and the FBI was due to the first point of the 11-point program, the call to, quote, eliminate class structure and to allow workers to control what they produce, end quote. The idea was that it was the poor and working class who could end the problems caused by capitalism and that private property needed to be abolished. Now, private properties of homes, cars, clothing, etc., but the abolition of the private ownership of factories, utilities, communication, transportation system, natural resources, and education and medical services. We found that the Young Patriarch's support for other Rainbow members posed a real threat to the daily machine and J. Edgar Hoover of the FBI. The president of the Young Patriarch and the coalition dispelled the illusion that Southern whites and Blacks could not unite. As a show of solidarity, we serve as security for a Black Panther rally at Chicago's Band Shell in Grant Park and at the United Front Against Fascism in Oakland, California. In Chicago, Hampton addressed the crowd and praised us for our support. stressing the uniqueness of Southern whites working alongside Black. This support and solidarity brought more police harassment and violence against the young patriarchs. Jacob B. Williams, author of From the Bullet to the Ballot, the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party and Radical Coalition Politics in Chicago, explains, quote, many of the police who patrolled uptown were former members of the white street gangs that used to clash with future members of the young patriarchs during their high school days. Scores of these officers was also Southern white migrants who sympathized with white supremacist group and despised the patriarchs for working with the Black Panthers, end of quote. Many of the cops had ties to the underworld. I knew of a truck being hijacked and a load of whiskey stolen with the assistance of some Chicago cops. As with other crimes being committed with police assistance, if I were to report the death, I would surely be putting my life in danger. It was safer to just look the other way. At the beginning of the Rainbow Coalition, we understood that there would be more civilians of the Chicago police, but we did not expect it to intensify as quickly as it did. The FBI COINTELPRO unit alone was manned by more than 2,000 full-time FBI agents across the country. These agents was supported by more than 2,000 informers, each of whom were paid $300 a month. COINTELPRO Counterintelligence Program was a program of the Federal Bureau of Investigation Agency that operated between 1956 and 1971. Its mission was to run covert operations to gather information on groups and individuals and to eliminate radical and opposition groups within the United States that the FBI deemed to be subversive or a threat to national security. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover had a particular dislike for the Panthers. So we found ourselves alongside the Black Panthers being subjected to repression, blatant harassment, and political prosecution of political crimes. The COINTELPRO programs use fraud, false news article, letters, and surveillance to categorize us as a subversive group along with other groups and individuals, such as Martin Luther King, NAACP, American Indian Movement, Women Rights Group, SDS, and even Albert Epstein. As Ward Churchill in the COINTELPRO papers documented from the FBI's secret wars against dissent in the United States wrote, quote, the local police prosecutor and the FBI in their efforts to destroy the Rainbow Coalition and other national radical groups secretly instructed its field office to propose schemes to misdirect, discredit, disrupt, and otherwise neutralize specific individuals and groups. Authority rested with top FBI officials in Washington who demanded assurance that there is no possibility of embarrassment to the Bureau. More than 2,000 individual actions were approved. In a memo the FBI directly identified the Young Patriots as an ally of the Chicago chapter of the Black Panthers. They pulled out all the stops to destroy alliances between the Panthers, street gangs such as the Mau Mau, am I pronouncing that correct? And just about everyone who might listen to the vision of the Panthers. Besides the FBI and its hirelings were other agencies that had no budget estimates, although they may fairly suppose that the Black Ops pros of the National Security Agency, the CIA, the Army Intelligence, the Civil Service Commission, and the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare did not work for free. In addition to the federal agency were the municipal police, quote, red squads, end of quote, that were operating in every major city in the country. The Chicago Red Squad was running as many as 500 agents, 143 in New York, 84 in Los Angeles, and 40 in Boston. Under the term of COINTELPRO, all of these agencies, federal and municipal, were supposed to be coordinating their work with the FBI. The FBI targeted the Black Panther Party, Students for Democratic Society, the Young Lords, and the Young Patriot as a formidable threat, as described in FBI memos obtained by the Freedom of Information Act. A memo dated May 1st, 1969, from Hoover to the Chicago office of the FBI Counterintelligence Program states, quote, authority is granted to instruct selected BPP informants for use in creating a rift between the BPP and the students of the Democratic Society, end of quote. The 1969 memo continues. You want to take that part, Sister Veronica? You want me to read that, finish that page?
It's up to you, sis. You've read quite a bit, huh?
Okay, so I mean, I can finish the page and you can take 151.
Okay.
Chicago has proposed that BPP informants be instructed to plant the idea that SDS exploiting the BPP. There were various good arguments available to accomplish this, such as the SDS is using the BPP for their dirty work, or SDS will regulate the BPP to the status of service. The planting of these ideas in the minds of the BPP leadership holds no problem. It will be a definitive advantage if these two groups were alienated. We were authorized in Chicago to instruct selective informants to plant ideas and cautioning them to make sure that various ideas are different in nature and, of course, would not leave BPP leaders with the idea that this is a plan. Okay, you ready to take 151?
Yes. An additional memo to the director of the FBI from the Counterintelligence Program in Chicago specifically targets the Young Patriots and the Young Lords. It states, In recent weeks also, the local BPP group affected a similar coalition with the Young Lords, a near North Side Puerto Rican youth gang, and the Young Patriots, the latter an offshoot of Job or Income Now, in parentheses, join, an SCS affiliate group of young whites. Chicago will follow this and related developments closely, and as the opportunity presents itself, will submit appropriate counterintelligence suggestions, end quote. The FBI also tried to recruit members of the Patriots. In 1969, Bobby McGinnis, Ronnie Roos, and I were invited to Augustana College in Rock Island, Illinois, to make a presentation on the Young Patriots at a screening of the American Revolution II, a recent documentary about the coalition between the Illinois Black Panthers and the Young Patriots. That evening, we were invited to a student's house for a party. Around midnight, we left the party to return to Chicago. Shortly after leaving, we were stopped and surrounded by several police vehicles, ordered out and to lay face down in the road. Our vehicle was searched and we were arrested for possession of stolen property and suspicion of having a controlled substance. The cops said that during the vehicle search, they found 2 collector coins belonging to the student that lived in the house that we just left, in addition to a white powder. We stated that we were not guilty and did not know anything about the items found in the car. Although we did plead guilty for having open alcohol, we were not charged with that crime. We were handcuffed and arrested. Then it became obvious that it was some kind of a setup. Because it was a weekday, we expected to go to court and be arraigned. Instead, each one of us was taken individually into an interrogation room where we were met with 2 FBI agents. We were told that we were facing jail time for stolen property, and more years would be added when the results of the suspicious powdered substance returned. Eventually, they stated that if we were to become their informants, then all charges would be dropped and there would be a financial gain. They also stated that the vehicle that we had borrowed was being impounded because its owner, David Komatsu, had recently traveled to Cuba. They explained that even though the vehicle did not go to Cuba, it's possible that it was used for drug trafficking due to the suspicious white powder found in it. We knew that the ordeal was bullshit, so we refused to cooperate or accept their offer. When our lawyer arrived and heard of the FBI's attempts to recruit us as informants and the physical evidence against us, he threatened to file false arrest and harassment charges against the FBI and the police. To our surprise, all charges were dropped and we were released. But the cops still couldn't determine what the suspicious white powder was. Probably baby powder, right? That was just my 2 cents. Mr. Komatsu informed Bertucci that it was flea powder for his dog. Oh, I wasn't too far off. You could actually use baby powder for the same purpose. In May of 1969, members of the Rainbow Coalition were again trying to defend themselves. Mayor Daley and Illinois State Attorney Edward Hanrahan announced that a War on Gangs program would be launched to rid the city of gangs that were a threat to the safety of the citizens of Chicago. Not coincidentally, this act came with the help of COINTELPRO and was announced only days after the Rainbow Coalition and the Young Lords attempted to march on Daley's Bridgeview neighborhood protesting the murder of the Young Lords Manuel Ramos. Furthermore, it was only days after the premiere of American Revolution II. Daley's police stopped the marchers from entering his neighborhood with full riot gear.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. The Daley machine kept people separated by its perverse system of racism. The mayor was very satisfied if gangs, poor ethnic and minority groups, and people of color were fighting each other, as long as they stayed in their place, were unseen, and did not cross into middle and upper class communities or stayed with their own race. Dissension gave the machine the excuse to convince residents that the city's unlawful orders to the Chicago police to use excessive force was not only necessary, but legal. A terrified population meant a healthy defense budget for the Daley machine. This task could be implemented by convincing the public that the Rainbow Coalition, dissident groups, and gangs who disagreed with the machine's dictator were criminals and needed to be feared. The more statistics the city could gather on violence by these groups, gangs, and communities meant more federal and state money the city could appropriate for the police. In Chicago's ghetto, Daley did not want laws to be obeyed because obeying the laws was not profitable. Undoubtedly, Daley knew how to deal with street gangs, but what he was facing was his worst enemy, highly visible, radical, and racially diverse organizations whose membership included many former gang members that were now political activists and who understood the community's needs better than he did. His old group, the Hamburgs, were only interested in advancing power to white people. Even the name Rainbow Coalition, representing all races, became a threat to Daley's power in Chicago. This revolutionary coalition spoke with the same voice and acted as one group, even as each organization remained autonomous in its decision-making. Daley was determined to stop it from gaining any political power in Chicago. In 1969, there were 452 gangs operating in Chicago. Daley's concern was that if they would be brought into the Rainbow Coalition or otherwise unite, he would lose most of his power to control the city. Daley, Hanrahan, and members of the Red Squad and COINTELPRO went on a campaign to criminalize street gangs and the Rainbow Coalition. Daley declared that they extort money from businessmen and school children. They are responsible for assault, rape, robbery, burglary, and murder. By their actions, they seek to terrorize the community for the sole purpose of personal enrichment. Their actions indicate that they have no regard for their community or its residents, but are interested only in their personal gain. They seek to cloak this criminal activity under the guise of social involvement and what they advertise as constructive endeavors. Unfortunately, some groups which have no real knowledge of the community disregard the record and are misled into supporting criminal-led gangs. Isn't that just crazy? Because that whole definition really is what pertains to them, you know?
Literally, cops.
Literally, yeah. We were sure that Daley's statement referring to gangs, quote unquote, cloaking criminal activities under the guise of social involvement referred to members of the Rainbow Coalition. There were criminally led gangs in Chicago, but they were not members of the Rainbow Coalition. The Rainbow Coalition member groups were radical community organizations. During the initial organizational stages of the Rainbow Coalition, other gangs were approached to join, such as the Blackstone Rangers, Cobras, and others. Most sympathized with our purpose but declined. The Young Patriots found it interesting that the accusations that gangs were guilty of extortion, assault, rape, robbery, burglary, and murder were exactly what members of the Chicago Police Department were being accused of having committed in the past. On June 7, I know, right? On June 7, 1969, the Panthers responded to the war on gangs in their newspaper. In an article titled "Pig Daley to Destroy So-Called Gangs," they wrote, "Daley and his mad dog capitalist conspirators are plotting to murder potential revolutionary brothers and sisters who are to be true representatives of the oppressed communities. These brothers and sisters are poor, just like you and I. They are poor and sometimes confused, not because they choose to be, but because the so-called representatives in Washington, D.C., Springfield, Illinois, the so-called representatives in City Hall, sit around on their fat asses and talk about conditions and never do a damn thing about them. The real gang that creates violence is the Pig Daley's gang." On July 1st, 1969, commander of the Chicago Red Squad, William Olson, testified before a Senate subcommittee that the Black Panthers were a major threat to the citizens of Chicago and the United States. He again indicated from an FBI memo, without naming the groups, that the Black Panthers had recruited similar groups among Puerto Rican and poor white radicals who support them. Due to the media coverage in Chicago and suburban areas, both Daley's and Olson's statements had a profound effect on the number of visitors to Uptown. Financial contributions to community organizations dropped, and the number of outside volunteers participating in those programs dropped. Also, the Rainbow Coalition faced more harassment from the Chicago police. There was a notable increase in surveillance by plainclothes officers in unmarked police vehicles, more intense questioning, and threats while being stopped by the police, in addition to our apartments being raided at all hours of the night. Other Uptown groups, such as the Uptown Area People's Planning Coalition, experienced more harassment, with the police stopping and threatening their members. Roger Willis, a young community resident from West Virginia who was not a member but sympathized with us, was targeted, harassed, and identified as a Young Patriots member by the cops, as well as other non-members. The cops believed that all Uptown youth were potential members and discouraged them from joining us. The Young Lords and Black Panthers also experienced more harassment. Gangs in other neighborhoods also felt the effects of the war on gangs. The Thorndale Jag-Offs, a gang north of Uptown, had several of their leaders arrested and sentenced to prison terms for what they said were false charges ranging from theft to attempted murder. In March of 1970, an article appeared in the Chicago Tribune newspaper that attempted to criminalize the Young Patriots, titled, "Police Seek to Link Loop Bomb Raided Group." The article stated that the Chicago police were attempting to link the Young Patriots in Chicago to a bomb that was discovered in the Chicago downtown building 6 months earlier. The article adds that the police had raided an apartment in the Lakeview community where several groups were attending a seminar on anarchy, and found floor plans of several Chicago buildings. The location of the bomb found 6 months earlier was marked with an X on one of the maps. The article says that the police arrested a number of the Young Patriots, in addition to members of the Latin Cobras, Black Assassins, and Black Disciples. The Young Patriots had no associations with any of these groups, and none of our members were present at the seminar. The article did not identify who wrote it, and when asked to produce evidence, the Chicago Tribune stated that they did not know how it got into their newspaper. That's crazy, right?
Yeah. Wow.
It says, we believe that the article was submitted by the FBI as part of their campaign to spread false news in accordance to one of their memos. Even Republican Alderman Robert O'Rourke of Uptown's 48th Ward was involved in harassing street people who he considered gang members. He would go on ride-alongs with 2 police officers for his protection. O'Rourke and 2 uniformed police officers stopped me as I was walking on Sheridan Road. He made it clear that he was there to serve justice on street gangs and that he was going to rid Uptown of them. I informed him that the Young Patriots was not a gang, but an organization to serve the community. O'Rourke also stated that he knew that I was a student at Northeastern Illinois University and cautioned me about recruiting college students into the Young Patriots. After beating me on the legs with a nightstick, searching me, and much verbal abuse by the cops, I was told to go back and tell my gang that they were coming after us. It was not unusual for Republican and Democratic politicians to agree with each other when it came to common enemies. That's still the case today, I think. Neither party liked us, considering us a threat to the stranglehold that they both had on the neighborhood. On August 11, 1970, O'Rourke sent the following letter to Mayor Daley. Dear Mayor Daley, a matter has just come to my attention that causes me concern, and I am not certain as to what procedure I should follow. I am therefore presenting the matter directly to you, as I know you will take whatever steps are necessary. I am enclosing a Polaroid photo of a poster indicating Daley to be the instigator of the riots during the Democratic Convention in Chicago that is on the door of the Young Patriots organization located at 4408 North Sheridan Road. The organization, as you know, bears some watching. My concern, however, is that some unbalanced person could be influenced by the poster. By the poster, sorry. Sincerely, Robert J. O'Rourke, Alderman, 48th Ward. We had always feared that any member of the Young Patriots could be the next victim of police brutality or murder. John Howard was a Southern migrant and a member of Joint from its very beginning. He was featured in the film American Revolution 2, trying to unite people in Uptown in support of the Black Panther Young Patriots Coalition. Raymond Tackett was associated with the Young Patriots and was a member of Rising Up Angry, an affiliate group. Both Howard and Tackett returned to their homes in the South to organize using rainbow politics. Both were killed because of their beliefs. According to the Firing Line newspaper, on a trip home to Georgia in 1969, he, meaning John Howard, was recognized as the guy who loves niggers in Chicago. He was found the next day with his throat cut. Raymond Tackett was killed in 1973 under circumstances eerily similar to John Howard's murder. Tackett returned to his home state of Kentucky to organize in the mining town of Evers. He was in the process of starting a Serve the People inspired free clinic when he was killed. But it was the Black Panthers and Young Lords who suffered the most repression by the Chicago police. On December 4th, 1969, head of the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton, and Black Panther Party member Mark Clark were murdered by the Chicago Police Department in the early hours of the morning while they were sleeping. Hampton had been betrayed by one of his closest friends who had become an informant. Over 90 shots were fired by the police, with only one fired into the wall by the Black Panthers. Later studies showed that the single bullet was believed to be fired by Clark, and probably in self-defense, as it was fired in an upward direction. While Fred Hampton and several members of Panthers were in Canada, informant William O'Neill, a member of the Black Panther Party and a friend of Fred Hampton, was instructed by Roy Mitchell of the FBI to get a detailed floor plan of Hampton's apartment located at 2337 Monroe Street for a planned police raid. The floor plans were turned over to Richard Hellevec, assistant to Illinois State Attorney Edward Harris, who passed the information on to the chief of a special prosecutors unit. Fred Hampton was a visionary and believed that street gangs should stop waging war against each other. He was the primary source for the Young Patriots and Young Lords, along with the Black Panthers, to form the Rainbow Coalition. His belief was that gangs needed to channel their energy into serving their community. He knew the dream of a rainbow coalition of people could work for the benefit of all be a struggle because the gangs have been fighting each other for so long. Racism would have no place in Hampton's dream. Class struggle by all people overcoming their oppression was his revolutionary dream. The murder of Hampton and Clark was devastating to the Rainbow Coalition. The members of the Young Patriots felt that a great friend and leader had been taken from them. Hampton felt the pain of all poor people, regardless of their color, and he knew firsthand the suffering caused by poverty, racism, and class hatred. He wanted to help all people to gain power so they could unite and fight for equality in a system that denied it to them. We were in hopes that another leader would take over that had the same compassion and caring that he had. Our concern was that given we were Southerners, we would not be allowed to continue our partnership with the Black Panthers. The Young Patriots resolved that we would continue working under the umbrella of the Rainbow Coalition if Hampton was replaced with someone who shared his political beliefs and is willing to continue working with us. We wanted to continue our relationship with the Young Lords too. We hope the Black Panthers would continue to do the same.
Wow.
I just can't believe that this mayor
I'm looking at his record. He has served 5 terms for 11 and a half years, part in almost 12. I can't understand how he won his term by a landslide by a 24-point margin, where he was against another another candidate by the name of Roland Burns, who were Black. His party was independent. And Daley served, you think he served as a Republican, but he was a he was a member of the Democratic Party, which don't mean no damn different. But this was one of the cruelest mayor that ran for a political office next to Trump. He's outrageous. He is totally outrageous. And it's just amazing that it amazed me that all these crooked cases in which a lot of people end up in jail, they have not revisit those cases and release those innocent people who are still in prison now behind this guy, terroristic, thug-like, underworld, tastic and plots. It just blows my mind.
Yeah. And those, like the statistics with the elections and stuff. I mean, if you have that much people bought, I don't believe those numbers. You know what I mean?
Those numbers was rigged.
Yeah, yeah.
Rigged. It reflects today in what's going on, which I think the whole political party is more like a drama reality show. Because one thing that you can capture the core of people's heart is with drama. And that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot to that. But when we were reading certain bits and pieces of that, and I think Sister Veronica said, like, that sounds like right now, and like all of it does. It's all, I mean, we all know that 96% of these people are not, well, maybe they went in it for the right reasons, but then they get bought and blah blah blah, whatever. Right. So, but the problem that we have mostly with police is or corrupt politicians is that they're constantly sitting there and blaming Black and brown and poor and unhoused and trans and this, that, and the other thing communities for being, these monsters, and these, we're sucking the welfare out of everybody, or whatever the case may be that they're complaining about in that moment. And they're the ones doing all of it. And there's a quote that I just so happened to pass recently, and it was like, I'm not entirely sure if it's actually by the guy, I don't know how to pronounce his name correctly, but Goebbels, he was one of the psychopaths in the Holocaust. But he said something along the lines of, like, blame the other, accuse the other person of what you're doing, and people will believe you, essentially, right? And accuse the other side of what you are guilty. That's what it is. I couldn't find it. And that's what keeps happening. Like, that's what's happening constantly, even right now. Like, people are demonizing trans people, or we'll say it's the Republicans right now, but like you were saying before, it didn't actually matter. Look at this fucking, he was a Democratic mayor back then. You know what I mean? Like, it's two wings of the same bird. It's also in our mission statement. Like, the members of the Democratic and the Republican Party are not here for us, right? That's why we're here talking about the stuff that we're talking about, is because it needs to be done by the people, because all they're doing is picking a group of people, whichever group of people it may be, at, you know, whether it be pulling over a black man or calling a trans person a groomer, when we all know who actually ends up freaking touching kids behind closed doors and all that kind of stuff. You know, like, that's really what it comes down to, is they're just fucking deflecting or projecting all of the above.
Right. Gaslighting, all of it.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a rant, sorry.
Oh, no problem. And this brings, you know, several points of the 10-point platform from the appendix second or third from Kwame, Brother Kwame book, where we want to end to the robbery by the capitalists of our Black and oppressed community, where it's stated from the 10-point platform, we believe that the racist government has robbed us, and now we are demanding the overdue debt of 40 acres and, you know, to Muse 40 acres into Muse were promised like 100 years ago at restitution to slave labor or mass murder of Black people. We will accept the payment to in currency, which will be distributed to the many community, in which, you know, these politicians would do anything or everything to try to move certain people out of their community, so this way they can make it affluent and make it you know, more attractive from what they have done to the Puerto Rican community. Also, furthermore, it said that the American racists have taken part in a slaughter of over 50 million Black people. Therefore, we feel that this is a modest demand that we make. And also, you know, reflecting on point number 8, we want an immediate end to all wars of aggression, which daily showed, you know, he didn't give a damn, you know, as long as his neighborhood, as long as his area and friends are taken care of, which is the privileged people. And under this point of the 10-point platform is say, we believe that the various conflicts which exist around the world stem directly from the aggressive desire of the United States ruling circle and government to force its domination upon the oppressed people of the world. And we believe that if the United States government or its lackeys do not cease this aggression wars, that it is the right of the people to defend themselves by any means necessary against the aggressor. And I think this is the reason why you had like President Johnson as well as Kennedy, who, you know, reinforced the civil rights movement, because back in the 60s, this is before you were born, we was really at the break of the whole country being overthrown because of, you know, all these wrongdoings to the people that was happening, and the elite circle was getting away in doing this, where it was crazy. It was really crazy. And we had a terrorist in office as well as to police and govern the people. And it's no different from what is happening now. And, you know, like me, I believe in defunding the police because of the fact we pour in so much money in the department, and still there's more shooting. Like there's another shooting that have taken place in Virginia of the same thing. And we cannot blame it on, number one, we can't blame it on the type of training. Then they're going to look at the background. We can't blame it all on the background. We have to look at the whole system itself. And by taking a bigger picture, you know, by bringing in the community, a community review board, not a citizen, but a community review board, what makes a major difference when, again, you have the police department or the lead or that circle who would try to minimize the power of the people, so this way they can stay in control because they know what they're doing that's wrong is wrong.
Mhm.
You know,
Yep.
and it's not going to get any better. It's not going to get any better. And now what I have a feeling is going to happen is that if the people are in power to defund the police or get rid of the police, they are going to empty the jails, put all the criminals back in the street who deserve to be behind jail. They will be very lenient with the laws, so this way they can prove their point, and they're going to bring in AI, artificial intelligence, to man that area in controlling the government, where you don't need that many producers, or you just need one person or a few producers to operate behind AI. And that will be another war where it will be a wicked web that's being woven to control the masses.
I mean, they're already starting that. San Diego, San Francisco, somewhere, Los Angeles got robo dogs.
Yeah, yeah. The drones, you name it. Yep. And I think that's where it's going to head at.
And
You
somebody
know,
else
because if
pointing
you,
out.
yeah,
Sorry.
because if you, no problem. But if you go to a city hall meeting, you know, it really throws me back of all this money that goes to one particular department, and the only thing you hear is the police department. Now,
Oh,
like for example, with Virginia, they're going to make sure that the sheriff department have cameras, and I'm like, what's the purpose when they have the option to turn it off when it's supposed to be, you know, some kind of law or ordinance where they're not supposed to touch that camera except to start it.
right. We learned
Or
with Tyreek's case that every single reform that we've tried failed miserably.
yeah, because what good is it even if the cameras stay on if we all watch it and see clearly what happened and they still get off?
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's all politics. And they, like you say, Sister Veronica, they are really getting away with this. And it's like a waste of money, a taxpayer money that's being pumped into these departments and hush hush money. And they know what they're doing is wrong, and they're not controlling the situation. They're really bludgeoning us.
Yeah.
And that also opens the door to go back to Cop City, where they killed Tortuguita, who apparently
Right.
had their hands up and they were seated when they were killed by the police. But that's also like I'm probably gonna say the wrong number, so don't quote me. But like it's like a $90 million facility that they're trying to make that's going to serve as a police and military training for urban warfare scenarios. That also will, like, I believe there's something weird. It sounds weird when you say it out loud, but I believe it's going to like double as a Hollywood studio. Like that's how depth this place is going to be when it comes to the urban warfare aspect of it.
Wow.
Right.
And when it comes to us and our military, like who our allies are, like that I don't know how, I'm not the most knowledgeable when it comes to like foreign affairs necessarily. But like people are saying that, you know, there's possibility of getting like our military trained by like Israel and stuff like that, because we are allies with those, you know what I mean? Like them coming over here and using that facility, and it's not going to be the last one. They're not going to just stop at one of them. It's going to be some giant, well, hopefully not. Hopefully they manage to stop it. But the plan that they have is absolutely astronomical. So if we're struggling with what they're capable of now, I do fear what Sister Anna's saying with the technology and the AI and all of that kind of stuff, but also even like for workers, like we were talking about, like what happens when they don't freaking need us anymore.
Right. And that's the one thing that I must say, Dr. Ulma, I don't agree everything of what he say or does, but there's one thing he said that which is quite notable today, and that in the schools they have taken out the most crucial thing that we need, and that's with our hands, and that's trades, a trade skill. Because I remember going to when I was in high school, you know, it was important that I take typing. And I remember my typing teacher say, you know what, you can have any jobs that will come and go, but the one thing you will have is a lifetime skill. And that lifetime skill is knowing how to type, because you will always be marketable. Same thing with trades, where we need to learn woodcraft, and we need to know sewing. We need to know things that deals with auto mechanic. We need to know things of survival skills, which is not implemented in a school anymore. And it gotten to a point where now people don't even know how to write in penmanship. And that's the one major thing that we have to learn as human beings, to record our lives, history. And there's so much being taken out, where we're being stripped of so many things that help build civilization, that's now being taken away, along with our human rights. Where we're going to be living like Will Smith, I Am Robot, or, you know, one of his scary movie where all these doggone creatures are like breathing and trying to live in the corner during the daytime till it get dark for them to feed up on anything that's dealing with blood. It is just going to come down to that, you know, and it's a lot of things that's being really blown and taken over our head, where we need to fight for these things that are essential back in the schools, you know. But they so worry about this critical race theory and taking away these books that reflect on not the wrong and the right of history, but history itself. And it's something that, you know, we cannot just let go and hope, you know, for the best. But I really feel sorry for the next generation. And if we don't have these after school programs that can reinforce things of what we have learned in our upbringing, you know, we're going to have a generation that's not only going to be raised as anti-sociable misfits, but they're going to be anti-sociable misfits that are going to roam aimlessly under the control of the 1%, you know.
I don't know. Gen Z is pretty badass.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll be damned. You know, yeah,
A lot of
yeah,
I mean,
it is definitely up to us. You know, I feel like, you know, those kinds of things are things to be expected of the enemy. You know, The history is not on point now. You know, it hasn't been. I think all of us could probably narrow down the point in time when we realized that what we were learning was bullshit and it was inaccurate. You know, I had a whole grieving process. You know, when I realized,
I'm still,
you know, it's like, what do you mean? What? You know, it's like, and I was a straight A student, you know, I was like, you know, it was just a whole a whole thing. But you know, we can't expect them to, the enemy, to educate our babies with the right with the right history. That just ain't never gonna happen, you know. But I did want to bring up another point, you know, because of course this whole chapter is, you know, and throughout the book, of course, but particularly this chapter here was really so dense with the COINTELPRO attacks, and what that looked like, you know, the different torture mechanisms, you know, up to, you know, people dying, losing their lives. And I wanted to read a part of Chairman Mao's Red Book, and it's on the second portion under classes and class struggle, where it says, I hold that it is bad as far as we are concerned if a person, a political party, an army, or a school is not attacked by the enemy, for in that case, it would definitely mean that we have sunk to the level of the enemy. It is good if we are attacked by the enemy, since it proves that we have drawn a clear line of demarcation between the enemy and ourselves. It is still better if the enemy attacks us wildly and paints us as utterly black and without a single virtue. It demonstrates that we have not only drawn a clear line of demarcation between the enemy and ourselves, but achieved a great deal in our work. You know, and it's woven throughout here, you know, but if that doesn't tell you that you're doing something right, you know, you look at what the Rainbow Coalition, the original Rainbow Coalition was able to accomplish here in you know, breaking down some of these racial barriers and internal contradictions that lied within the people, you know, that was, you know, very powerful. And still, even till this day, you know, it was very recent for me. I didn't even know I had never heard of the Rainbow Coalition.
Yeah.
It's been less than
But you
6
know
months
what?
for me.
But you know what? Some people say, well, you know what? By Fred Hampton being so open to these different organizations, it caused his death, and that's the reason why I have brought up as far as his, you know, his security, because it wasn't his the various organization; it was his close circle. Same thing with Malcolm X, same thing with Dr. Martin Luther King, or I should say Malcolm X, when he went, after he went on his trip to Mecca, and his whole view changed from, you know, straying, I wouldn't say straying, but, you know, in opposite of his primary teaching from Minister Elijah Muhammad. But it was the people that's in his security that was open and vulnerable, you know what I'm saying? And it wasn't just the people who was involved. And by you splitting it's like splitting your army, you know, apart, where you can get attacked from the back or, you know, from the sides, where you have to always stay together. And I'm sure, you know, Chairman Mao has said something about keeping, or, you know, a strong fort, or, you know, a strong army. And I'm sure we can find one of his quotation in regarding to that. But, you know, with the Rainbow Coalition, the first Rainbow Coalition, they were attacked by many angles, and you gotta pretty much say, could you survive all of that back then? I know when I was growing up, you know, with my father, he was his own, you know, activist, defender, because he was really shocked that a lot of people had backed down when he said, we need to stand for our rights. And a lot of people was afraid, but my dad was the type of person, he didn't wait. He went and did what he could, though he was a human sacrifice for improving the community and making sure that our kids were safeguarded. Where, I had encounters where not only with the police, but with the fire department, where they didn't care about us, where the police officer will use the N-word or, have their, lack of concern and brutalize a lot of people in our neighborhood, or we would be stuck in an elevator and the police department, the fire department would ask us a stupid question like, what floor are you stuck on? How the hell we know when we got a brick wall facing us and we can't get out? Where it came down to a point where we had to risk our lives and go up that hatch in the ceiling and pray to God that the elevator will not move, where we have to open the door to get our own self and save our own self. And this is in a project where we don't even know what floor we was getting stuck at. And every day our elevator would get stuck, Either I have to walk up 13 flights of stairs in the hots. Or
that's how you prepare for them marathons you did.
Yeah, right. I had to climb up, and it was so bad because I had to climb up 13 flights of stairs with my daughter, her stroller, her bag, my bag, and the sweat just coming down my eyebrows and head while my little baby daughter looking with her pacifier in her mouth laughing. Oh my God. I hate going to work the next day because I knew I had to walk up 13 flights of stairs again.
My goodness.
Yeah, but it's just crazy, all these elements, all these different things that the First Rainbow Coalition was being tugged and had to fight against. And it's amazing that they were able to stay together, instead of just breaking down to nothing. Of course, there was some gaps and openings, but they were able to oversee all those adversities, and how Mayor Daley and his thug, group of people was doing everything in forces to be with a COINTELPRO to conquer and destroy. And pretty much this is what we see now as our rights, our individual rights are being taken away, especially with healthcare, where, we're supposed to be protected by HIPAA, where we're supposed to be protected by the Affordable Care Act of 2008, reinforced by 2010. And it seems like there's nothing affordable. There's nothing that's protecting us, where we're still in the same situation where not only our information is being reviewed, but we're being forced to take things that we don't even have a clear, full history of it yet, like those shots,
Right. And on the issue of unity, because they were able to come together and break down, a lot of those internal contradictions and come together around the things that the, the commonalities in the material conditions that they were dealing with. It also makes me think of George Jackson in his book, Blood in My Eye, where in the preface, he says, settle your quarrels, come together, understand the reality of our situation, understand that fascism is already here, that people are already dying who could be saved, that generations more will die or live poor, butchered half lives if you fail to act. Do what must be done. Discover your humanity and your love in revolution. Pass on the torch. Join us. Give up your life for the people.
Mm,
Um,
wow.
That's one of my favorite quotes from George
And it's
Jackson.
so true. It's so true, and it reflects today. And really, honestly, with all the nitpicking that is going on with the revolution, we need to really think about what is against us and what we need to do to fight against it.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
agree.
I like the part where it talked about, let me see where it was at. I think it was in the first one that we read where he talked about law and order. Yeah, it was page 130 of the first chapter, where it was talking about daily, where he was going to prove to the world that no one comes to his city and causes disorder. And, you know, as if the disorder wasn't already there, but, you know, that also makes me think of another part of the same book of George Jackson, where it says, law and order is their objective. And it has it in quotes, law and order, right? Because we know what that means. Law and order is their objective. Ours is perfect disorder. Our aim is to stop the life cycle of the enemy culture and replace it with our own revolutionary culture. This can be done only by creating perfect disorder within the cycle of the enemy's culture's life process and leaving a power vacuum to be filled by our building revolutionary culture. When the fight takes place within the cities, the disorder will clearly be hastened. This will have an immediate effect on the consciousness of the bulk of the population and will strain the relationship between government and governed to the utmost. So we talk about, you know, raising the contradictions and delegitimizing the authority that we've given these people and taking it back. That's what it looks like, you know, what it's clearly been depicted in this whole chapter, you know, on
Right.
the Rainbow Coalition.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it's gonna be a big fight.
Yeah.
It's really gonna be a big fight, and people, our youth need to really look into this and protect their lives.
Yeah. I think Sister Veronica just brought it. I mean, we're at like 2 hours anyway, I think, with those two little George Jackson quotes. Or she might have just brought us to a close.
If you have not read Blood in My Eye,
I
it's
know
a
they were actually, the UPM class was doing it at one point, but I don't think I
okay.
got it. But yeah, that's definitely sounds like one of the ones that I should be on my to-do list.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you can
I
also
agree
watch
with you.
Black August. Black August, you can find that on YouTube.
Okay.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, definitely it's going to be, you know, though I can relate to everything that happened during that time period because I was born and raised doing that, but it's going to be something that I would actually read from somebody else's perspective as well. And also I want to say, you know, for those who's going to review this video later on, Sunday, instead of us meeting at 2:00,
Mhm.
due to the fact I got a race and I have to race in the woods and I'll probably pass out. I won't be able to moderate. So we're going to meet around 7:00 p.m.
That's Eastern time.
7:00 p.m. That would
Is
be
it?
a better time.
Will that be Eastern your time, sis?
Yes, it would be Eastern Standard Time.
Okay.
7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time instead of 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Okay.
And yeah, we'll be at home. I'll be at home relaxing or rubbing my feet.
Smelling
I
like
just
some
wanna-
Bengay or something.
yeah, I just want to tell you, there was like some races where we do run in the woods and stuff like that. And I
Mhm.
remember going to one race. It was in Yorktown. And I was at my pace and I was like in the middle, and it was a number of people in the back. But I was running through the woods, and then I heard a it was like a
Oh.
bear, and I was like, oh my God, I was running. Man, I ran so fast and in the cornfield because we had to go through that. That thing scared a mess out of me. And the thing about it, the same race is coming up. And I'm gonna make sure when I get to that point, I'm gonna make sure I have my phone with me so I can record if I can record. But I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the dangerous territory over here. Yeah,
my-
but at 7 p.m. will be a great time where we're gonna go live again, and we'll read our article. And I think by Monday, when Brother Lobo, moderate, will be the last 2 chapters that's remaining in the book, and then we'll go on to our next book, which is Aaron Dixon. So if you're not, if you don't have the book, I recommend this is a great time to buy it. Go get it from the thrift store. You can earn
Yes.
points. I think I post that
Mhm.
information. So, I would recommend that, or you could get, the ebook and things like that. But I must say, I appreciate our honorary comrade, High Thurman, for explicitly giving us a view
Yes.
from being raised, in his young life, and be introduced to the revolutionary movement, and see that, there's a whole lot of similarities if you are outside that 1% group, different, and you would be treated the same, and it just reflect on his life, reflect on exactly what we all can relate to, and that's happening now, you know. So I thank him for just putting his experiences down on paper and writing out based on his notes, his journey, to show us, I can relate to what you're going through as an individual, as a Black person, as a white person, as a person who's poor, who's of people of color, and it's no different. It's no different, even down to the pictures. Don't you know, looking at his pictures that's in this book, especially the one with the
Mhm.
decapitated houses, this was East Harlem. This is what I had to walk through late at night,
Mm.
in the morning, and the smell, the stench of it,
Mm.
it would take you back. But this is not what I only seen, but this is what I had experienced, where we did not have a place to enjoy ourselves, um, and play and be a child and enjoy childhood, because we was left with these type of devastating rebels in which we had to grow up real quickly, unless there was a block party. And that's another thing that's missing,
Oh
you
yeah.
know. And that's the one thing that can bring community of people together, is by having more block parties, you know.
Yeah, I like watching them videos. I was watching one earlier, and it had a lot of snippets of what life was like in Harlem during this time frame, uh, and I just love watching it just because
Right.
I'm like I can visualize myself there. Like all the music and just culture and the love.
Because it was a familiar setting, because you had people who not only gathered together under the beat of one sound, one music, but you have people who will pitch in and buy food, buy things to help feed the community, to make sure that everyone is having a good time. And during that time, there wasn't a high rate of unlawful things that was happening. And there was people that was connecting with each other, where not only they became neighbors, real neighbors, but they became neighbors who was watching out for each other.
Right.
And
I
they
remember
knew
growing
each
up,
other.
anybody could tell us something. Like you
Mhm.
knew, you know, if you were doing something you weren't supposed to do, any adult in the neighborhood had the authority to handle your little butt. And you knew
That's
that your
it.
parents were going to find out, you know,
Uh-huh.
because people talk to each other. People are
That's
afraid
it.
to
The
talk to
kids
each other
was
now.
right. The kids were being watched. You knew your
Mhm.
neighbor's name.
Mhm.
You knew their faces. And if we haven't seen somebody in a long time, we would go to their door, knock on it, and say, "Hey, what's going on? Is there anything that I can get for you?" Our elderlies was sitting right there in front of their building. Here, you don't see them. They rarely come out, you know? So we need to bring those block parties back.
We sure do.
Hopefully when we do our annual planning of coming together, you know, we can propose that and just revisit that part in our past that make an impact on our present for our future generation to follow and to continue.
Mhm.
Yep. But I mean, this Mayor Daley, oh my God, I cannot believe this man has served 5 terms. It tells you a lot
Yeah.
of the scheme and the scam of a lot of things that's still present, where people don't really need the votes of people. They could just need the votes of the right people to keep them in office.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, that's my conclusion in regarding to this chapter. Very interesting.
Absolutely. All right.
Yeah.
Well, anybody
All
else got
right.
any last words?
Oh, unless Brother Johnny, you know, if he has anything he wants to add, if
I
he's
think
still on.
you just said exited.
Oh, okay. Well, I thank you, ladies, and
Yeah.
if you are available, Sister Elisa, come and join us on Sunday. If you are available, we would love to have you.
Yes, I will be on the ground, but I usually am driving around the time that you guys start, so I'll see what I can do.
Okay. Well,
All right.
for everyone, keep in mind, we're not going to be available at 2:00. We will be available at 7:00. I already told Shamako and put it in our chat for Brother Nico, whoever will be our IT technician. It will be 7 p.m. We will start. Eastern Standard Time.
Well, that sounds good. I will see you then.
Okay. All
All
right.
right.
Peace,
Night.
life, and love manifestation, and always black power, y'all.
All power to the people.
All power to the people.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.